Please be seated. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us and joining us for this time of remembrance for Canada's Indigenous veterans. My name is Glenn Van Dyken. I'm the MLA for Athabasca Barhead Westlock and the Deputy Chair of Committees, and it is my pleasure to be here today on behalf of Speaker Nathan Cooper. I'd like to acknowledge today's platform party, Her Honor, the Honourable Salma Lakhani, Honourable Rick Wilson speaking on behalf of the Premier of the Government of Alberta, Member Brooks Arkan Paul speaking on behalf of His Majesty's official opposition, Elder Francis Whiskey Jack, and Veteran John MacDonald. Welcome to all esteemed guests and Indigenous veterans who are with us also in the audience. I'd like to invite now Elder Francis Whiskey Jack to the lectern to provide the blessing.
Tansi Kakyo Nagumaganak, all my relations, Honorable Lieutenant Governor Rick Wilson, veterans, chiefs, Kakyo Nwakumagana, Colma Relations. I thank the Lieutenant Governor for giving me the protocol of tobacco as a sign of respect to preside in this most honorable ceremony. So with that, I ask you right now to all join me with your spirit, with your physical presence, your mentality, and your emotion, as we remember our fallen soldiers that have fought World War I, World War II. And so to begin with and start this day off, to recognize the wonderful gift of life and to be free to live in this country, which is so great, and to really feel that freedom of what that purpose was for our veterans that fought overseas and died so that we could be free. So with that, bear with me. Hau mamutawi mausi bantu kaksewatsin. Kakikini kanina naskamun, umutap matsun ep minamagusia. Ha ta pais nuanska tutaba kutawana. Ha umuta kakiksepaya kwaseam. Hau nutumuta kakio gap mamun te tsigu tahnuagumaganak tapmasoimi tsikmianokti kaise. Mina gap mamtene maya kegu gasmagan siganak. Kaki mek tsikugmatsunuao tapmatsia ni nanuta askina. Canada kaisigatek. So, in beginning this, I give and acknowledge what we know as Kitsimanitu, Creator, Great Spirit, God, that we appreciate this beautiful life that is a gift for all of us, and that we are so free to enjoy it. As we remember in this special day, those that have given up and sacrificed their life so that we could be free and enjoy the luxuries that we enjoy today. And with that, I honor and ask those spirit guides that we know in our culture as our grandfathers and grandmothers to bless us and carry us on in a good way, and to form that relationship from all our walks of life, the cultures that we have, the diversity of the peoples that live in Canada. And so I honor in a very special way my version of Soldier Boy with the drum as the song moves the spirit in a good way. Hi, hi.
Thank you so much for that, Elder Whiskey Jack, to begin our ceremony in a good way. Thank you. Though solemn, it is of the utmost importance that we take time to remember those who have fought for our country. Many brave souls have experienced the unpredictable, frightening circumstances that war brings. They have gone to the front lines and seen things that we could never imagine. For their bravery and sacrifice, I believe we, are eternally grateful. In the 20th century, approximately 12,000 First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people fought for Canada in various conflicts. Today, there are more than 5,000 Indigenous individuals actively serving across our country, 735 of those being from Alberta. For years, Indigenous soldiers have left their families, often having to learn a new language and be put in incredibly dangerous situations. Despite having fewer freedoms than other Canadians for far too long, they have served on the front lines both with honor and dignity. These brave servicemen and women have selflessly fought to protect our homes, our communities, and our freedom. Their service came not from a desire for notoriety, but from an innate sense of duty to protect the people of this great nation. Today, my hope is that we may honor these individuals the way they have always deserved. Their contributions have been paramount in building our province and our country. Indigenous veterans play an important role in our armed forces whilst upholding the traditions of their ancestors with integrity. To the 2,900 Indigenous veterans living here in Alberta, thank you. We honor you. We remember your sacrifice both today and every day. I will now invite the Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, the Honourable Salma Lakhani, to the lectern to provide remarks.
Thank you so much. As His Majesty the King's representative in Alberta and as a settler, I acknowledge all First Peoples who have called this place home for thousands of years and who welcomed us here to make our own lives. May we always dwell together on these lands with respect, understanding, and a sincere commitment to walking the journey of reconciliation, and now I say reconciliation. Thank you, Elder Francis Whiskey Jack, for starting us off in such a good and positive way. And thank you to Deputy Chair of Committees for bringing us together for this very important ceremony of remembrance. So, esteemed platform party guests, elected officials, chiefs, elders, veterans, and distinguished guests all. Since becoming Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, I have sought out opportunities to meet with Indigenous elders and community members and to listen to and learn from their accounts of their lives, their stories of their communities, and their descriptions of their complex relationship with Canada. Today, on National Indigenous Veterans Day, I find myself once again reflecting on those conversations. Time and again, Indigenous people have answered the call when Canada has gone to war. I would like to recognize all the Indigenous veterans who have been unsung heroes in Canada's history and whose contributions deserve recognition and remembrance always. As was mentioned, altogether more than 12,000 Indigenous people enlisted in the Canadian Armed Forces during World War I, World War II, and the Korean War, consistently serving with bravery and honor. As a nation, we have a moral imperative to honor the sacrifice and legacy of each and every one of them. The unveiling of the National Aboriginal Veterans War Memorial in Ottawa in 2001 was a vital step in this process, as was the decision in 1994 to establish November 8th as Day of Remembrance, specifically meant to honor the contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis soldiers. More work needs to be done to ensure their sacrifices are never erased from Canada's history, and more work will be done. But today, let me say to all Indigenous veterans and family members who have assembled here today, I am both humbled and touched to take part in this ceremony. Humbled in the face of the selfless contributions Indigenous enlisted women and men have made to further the cause of peace and freedom around the world, but also touched to play a part in honoring them by laying a wreath in their memory. As His Majesty the King's representative, I offer my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to Indigenous veterans and serving members everywhere. I also encourage all Albertans to educate themselves about the role First Nations, Inuit, and Métis women and men have played in our country's military history. To those among us who are grieving loved ones, may you find comfort in the knowledge that their proud legacies will always live on. Thank you, and may our fallen rest in peace.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor. I now invite Minister Rick Wilson, Minister of Indigenous Relations, to provide remarks.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Emily Van Dyken, for the introduction. And thank you, Elder Whiskey Jack, for the moving prayer. It's always an honor to be with you. First, I also want to acknowledge that we are gathered together today on traditional Treaty 6 territory, and also acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who have a deep connection with this land. It's an honor to stand before you today alongside Her Honor Selma Lakhani, Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, esteemed government colleagues, thank you for coming, John MacDonald, and distinguished guests. And thank you to all the chiefs for coming today. It's such an honor to have you here with us. Thank you. Today, we gather to honor the thousands of Indigenous people who have served in the Canadian Armed Forces and in peacekeeping efforts abroad. Indigenous peoples have a long and proud history of serving Canada, and their contributions have been invaluable, and their sacrifices immense. Indigenous veterans played crucial roles in both World Wars, the Korean War, Gulf War, as well as many numerous peacekeeping missions. They have brought unique and critical skills, perspectives, and cultural knowledge to their roles, enriching the efficacy of Canada's military in times of conflict. Today, we remember heroes from our past like Alex Decoto, Charles Checker Tompkins, and Elder Clarence Wolfleg. And as we reflect on their service, we're reminded of the bravery, resilience, and unwavering commitment Indigenous veterans have demonstrated throughout history. Their legacy is one of courage, one of honor, and it's our duty to ensure that their stories are told and remembered. Today, we're also here to acknowledge the almost 3,000 Indigenous members currently in the Canadian Armed Forces, Regular Force, and Primary Reserve Force. We salute you for your service and for your sacrifice. As we conclude, let us remember the National Indigenous Veterans Day was first observed November 8th, 1994 in Winnipeg. That day was established to recognize the often overlooked sacrifices and contributions of Indigenous veterans who served with distinction in the 3 major wars of the 20th century and beyond. For decades, their bravery and their dedication went largely unacknowledged on Remembrance Day, which is why this separate day of honor was created. National Indigenous Veterans Day is now observed across the country, providing us with an opportunity to reflect on the very rich history and enduring legacy of Indigenous veterans. As we stand here today, let us commit to ensuring that the sacrifices of Indigenous veterans are never forgotten. Let us honor their memory by sharing their stories, celebrating their achievements, and continuing to work towards a future where their contributions are fully recognized and appreciated. And I have one story to share. I've been honored to have been given a Cree name, Kihiu Napio, Eagle Man, and I was also honored last year by Elder Charles Fox from the Blackfoot Confederacy. And he gave me a name, Sipi Namaka. That was his dad's name. And his dad gave it to him. And then he gave it to me. His dad was a sniper in the war, but he didn't like to shoot people. So he would sneak out at night, and he would go into the enemy camp, and he would steal their guns. Can you imagine? So that's why he got the name, Sipi Namaka, takes the gun at night, a gentle warrior. So I was blessed to have been given that name, and I'm honored to have it. And I just, when you think back of what the soldiers have gone through in the past, sneaking into an enemy camp and taking their rifles, just an amazing story. So thank you, all of you, for coming today. It's such an honor to have you all and share the day with us.
Thank you very much, Minister Wilson. And I call on Member Brooks Arcand-Paul to provide his remarks on behalf of His Majesty's loyal opposition.
Your Honor, warriors, leaders, and all here today. Nanaskaman kisimanadu miyo kisigawa notch. Itsigason sipsis kipo chinia. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. Chiefs, leaders, veterans, warriors, thank you so much for being here today with us, and I'm pleased to be here representing His Majesty's loyal opposition. I'm grateful to honor Canada's Indigenous veterans today and every day. I want to acknowledge the following guests here today. Sergeant George Trottier, Easy Company 1st of the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment, retired U.S. Army. Ogimau Trevor Mercredi, Ogimau Vernon Watchmaker, and Ogimau Andy Aluk. The freedoms we experience in this country are because so many brave men and women, many of whom were Indigenous soldiers, served Canada with selfless dignity. Unfortunately, Indigenous veterans have not received the same recognition as their non-Indigenous contemporaries. Today, I would like to highlight a few brave veterans. Lloyd Hamilton was a Métis soldier from Calgary. He served in the Canadian Army during the Korean War. Together with an American soldier, Lloyd saved 80 Korean children in an orphanage who were caught in the Korean demilitarized zone. For this act of humanitarianism, he was awarded the Disciples World Peace Medal from the United Nations. Nanaskamun Lloyd, for your bravery and your sacrifice. Ogimau Chief Joseph Drever was from the Mistawasis First Nation. He served in both the First and Second World Wars, receiving a medal for bravery for his experience on the front lines. When he returned home, however, he did not have the same rights and privileges as other veterans he served alongside. Because of these experiences, Chief Drever became a strong advocate for Indigenous rights until he passed away in 1978. This year saw the creation of a recognition card in his honor. Nanaskuman Ogimaudriver for your bravery and your sacrifice. These are just two examples of the bravery and sacrifice of Indigenous veterans. Countless Indigenous peoples have taken crucial yet dangerous roles in various wars and missions and continue to uphold peace and unity to this day. To all Indigenous veterans, families, and loved ones, your stories and sacrifices are not forgotten. I thank you. Alberta thanks you. Canadians thank you. Nanaskumanawao.
Thank you, Member Arkan Paul. Today we are honored to have veteran John MacDonald with us, and I'd like to welcome veteran John MacDonald to the lectern to provide comment.
Good morning, Honourable Speaker of the Ledge Assembly of Alberta, Your Honour Selma Blanky, Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, veterans, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the privilege of addressing the Alberta Legislature on National Indigenous Veterans Day 2024. While exact statistics are difficult to determine, the rate of Indigenous participation in Canada's military efforts over the years have been impressive. These determined volunteers were often forced to overcome many challenges to serve in uniform, from learning new languages and adapting to different cultures, to have to travel great distances from the remote communities to enlist. The challenges they faced often extended to their post-service life. Many Indigenous war veterans would not receive treatment compared to other Canadian veterans. The First World War raged from 1914 to 1918, and more than 4,000 Indigenous people served in uniform during that conflict. It was a remarkable response, and in some areas, 1 in 3 able-bodied men would volunteer. Some communities saw every man between the age of 20 and 35 enlist. Indigenous recruits joined up for a variety of reasons, from seeking employment or adventure to wanting to uphold a tradition that had seen their ancestors fight alongside the British in earlier military efforts like the War of 1812 and the Boer War. Many Indigenous men brought valuable skills with them when they joined the military: patience, stealth, and marksmanship were well-honed traits of those who had come from communities where hunting was a cornerstone of daily life. Those attributes helped many of these soldiers become successful snipers and reconnaissance scouts. Indigenous soldiers earned at least 50 decorations for bravery during the year. Henry Louis Norwest, a Métis from Fort Saskatchewan, one of the famous snipers of the entire Canadian Corps, held a divisional sniping record of 115 fatal shots and was awarded the Military Cross with Medal and Bar. For his courage under fire. Tommy Prince was awarded 2 gallantry medals by the King at Buckingham Palace during World War II. He was also the most decorated Indigenous soldier in World War II. There are many more Indigenous personnel who have been honored for their gallantry during the many wars that Canada has participated in since the Korean War. The rich heritage has been recognized in many ways. The names given to several Royal Canadian naval warships over the years, like the HMCS Iroquois, HMCS Cuyahoga, and the HMCS Huron, are just one indication of our country's lasting respect for the contribution of the Indigenous veteran. This long tradition of military service has also commemorated with the National Indigenous Veterans Monument in Ottawa. This is a deeply symbolic memorial which features a large bronze eagle at the top with 4 men and women from different Indigenous groups from across Canada immediately below. A wolf, a bear, a bison, and a caribou, all powerful symbols that represent spiritual guides, which have long been seen by the Indigenous cultures as important to military success overlooked from each corner. My friend, Claude Pettit, a Korean veteran, spearheaded the production of this beautiful monument. Today, more than 1,200 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Canadians serve in the Canadian Forces at home, overseas, with the same fervor and pride as their ancestors. Their diversity is extraordinary. They represent over 640 district bands, sharing common beliefs and practices, and all unique in themselves, as well as 55 languages and distinct dialects that belong to 11 linguistic families. When you meet a veteran, please extend your hand and thank him for his service. He deserves it, because no man goes there because he's not brave enough. I've listed some of my heroes: Tom Longboat, Morris Prince, Tommy Prince, Charles Checker Tompkins, Sam Sinclair, and David Grey Eyes. There are many more. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking with you this morning.
Thank you very much, Veteran McDonald. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, the bugler, Colin Bonneau, will play the last post, which will be followed by a minute of silence. I ask that you please rise at this time. The act of remembrance. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Please be seated. Today we have 3 wreaths to honor our Indigenous veterans. I will now call on this year's representatives one at a time to come forward and take a moment to pay their respects at the wreaths before returning to their seats. The Honorable Salma Lakhani, Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, please come forward. Gives me great pleasure to call on Minister Rick Wilson and Member Brooks Arkan Paul to come forward and pay their respects on behalf of all members of the Legislative Assembly. It is a great honor to have veteran John MacDonald here today. Please step forward to pay your respects on behalf of all Indigenous veterans of Alberta. I'd like to thank the Honorable Salma Lakhani, Minister Rick Wilson, Member Brooks Arkan-Paul, Elder Whiskey Jack, Veteran John McDonald, the Bugler Colin Bonneau, and everyone else who joined us here today, all of you in person and online. It has been wonderful to see so many people recognize the importance of remembrance and appreciation of Indigenous veterans, the sacrifices they have made, and the challenges they faced at that time, but still even today. Following the ceremony, I'd like to invite the platform party to join me for photographs on the staircase. Thank you all for being here. This will conclude our ceremony. Feel free to mingle together as friends, colleagues, and veterans. I know Lieutenant Governor Salma Lakhani enjoys a precious time of mingling with the people here, so feel free to stay as long as you wish. Thank you.